Hey everybody, welcome back to the Environmental Podcast. This week we're going to be doing our third installment of our Ecology and Religion series. If you missed our other episodes on it, so this is the third, there's two prior to this, you should go give it a listen. I know you have nothing better to do.
Because everyone's stuck at home because of COVID-19.
Indeed.
This is kind of like our time capsule episode because we'll listen to this once the virus has either ravaged the human population or is kind of safely vaccinated. And we'll say, wow, what a crazy time that was.
Yes, it'll be crazy no matter what happens.
Our university has cancelled its classes.
Yeah, so everything's going to be moved online. We have a week off, which most people are thinking is nice, but it's stressing me out beyond
Belief?
beyond
grief.
Yeah. Work is a bit crazy because I work at one of the residences where like all the students are being kicked out of for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very high bad vibes. But I think I'm handling it pretty well.
Well,
anyway.
You said there was a controversy there today.
Yes, because of the high anxiety amongst people everywhere right now. An email was sent out saying, hey guys, how about we don't have parties every single night now that you don't have classes. You're not allowed guests, you're not allowed a bunch of people to be like crammed into one dorm room. Kind of like reasonable stuff that probably should be in place all year. So they sent that out, said if you break these rules, you'll be evicted. So last night, of course, a bunch of students broke all those rules. And today they got notices that they were being evicted. And right before I left work today, they all flooded the front desk and they were just getting very upset with us and upset with the staff and security and everyone being like, we're going to call our lawyers, we're going to talk to the media. And I was like, yeah, sure. Anyway, so
but the virus is an interesting case study.
For sure.
Because it's keeping people home, it's making people stock up, paranoia. You know, it's incredibly contagious and people are having to change their lifestyle and their work as well as their studying or hobbies or socializing or whatever it may be. So it's kind of fascinating in an eerie way to watch that take place across the world. Because it just seems so divorced from our everyday lifestyle. Yeah, what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, we're used to just everything being connected.
Yeah, connected. People usually, can travel freely.
There's no, risk of going to the store, there not being something there. So it's just a lot of things we're not used to, and so it's throwing everybody for a bit of a loop.
There's just a thick sense of unease in the air.
Yeah. But also I feel like there's a lot of optimism, or not optimism, but positivity. I feel like it's bringing out the best in some people.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. I mean, people will always criticize governments, for instance, about how they deal with emergencies. But from what I've seen, most governments have been quite good, quite proactive,
think so, yeah.
Taking it seriously, decently seriously. I mean, North America's kind of struggling for testing of the coronavirus, so we don't actually know how many cases there are. But in terms of trying to keep it on lockdown, people are doing pretty well. And there's been a few kind of nightmarish cases I've seen of people with confirmed cases of, confirmed with the virus who are deliberately going into public areas saying, I'm going to spread this, which is probably as cartoon villainish as humans can be. But
yeah,
for the most part,
that.
everyone is being quite cautious.
Yeah, they're willing to
careful.
Sacrifice their routine.
Well, I mean, then there's those people who are just stockpiling up on toilet paper and reselling it on Kijiji, but you were one of those, right? How did that go for you?
I have no toilet paper.
Yeah, because you sold it all.
Well, yeah, of course. I had to make some money. At work, we keep, every time I go in, because I've been in there every day, multiple times a day, there's another pack of Lysol wipes. And I'm like, whoever's doing this is contributing to the problem, but nobody knows where they're coming from.
What do you mean another pack? You're going through them that rapidly?
No. We're not using them. We wipe down the desk once every half an hour or so, but there's 100 wipes or whatever or more in a pack, so we're not going to go through them, and it's just weird.
I don't know what that is. I mean, obviously everyone's kind of scared, I don't want to get sick. But it seems like it's well, obviously there's some people exploiting it as I can make money, and there's some people probably who just get competitive at the grocery store and say, haha, I'm going to take the last roll of toilet paper or something. But I think it's mostly people just getting swept up in almost like a kind of unspoken peer pressure. Like everyone's doing it, so I should do it too. And then it just kind of spirals. It's like a feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, it's like here before any storm we get. People
Yeah.
are out there buying water and toilet paper and canned goods.
But that makes sense. This one doesn't make sense.
No. Especially the water. I saw people, Friday was like probably the worst, with just carts of water. Like they would buy like a bunch of 24 packs and like individual ones, whatever they could get their hands on. But I'm like, the water is not going to be
There's a lot of people who think that the public town water will be
shut down.
no, they consider it a possible source of infection,
Oh,
which is incorrect.
yeah.
But there's a lot of people who think like that.
I see.
Yeah.
I was just confused by that water thing.
But the virus is interesting with our current talk. Okay, so last week you mentioned we did 2 previous episodes. Last week was called Eden, and it was about common conceptions of paradise and pastoral imagery and Arcadia for the Greeks and Romans. And this week we're going to the other end of the spectrum, and we're talking a lot about apocalyptic imagery, common apocalyptic myths, and the word I learned last week, which is eschatology.
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 Yes.
Yeah, but I was trying to say eschatological,
Oh, I see.
which means something about the future, something prophetic or predictory.
It's really pretty much the end times, though, for almost all religions, or like even how your life will end, be it you're reincarnated, you go to heaven, you go to hell. Like there's,
So we can say that everyone has their own eschatology.
yes.
I think we just want to talk about the virus because it seems like, well, plague, that's a biblical end timesy event.
Yeah.
And this one, thankfully, I mean, it's incredibly contagious, but thankfully it's not so lethal.
Yes. We have healthcare systems to cope with it for people.
But it does make you think about how seriously emergencies can kind of rattle society, and how, we hear the word apocalypse and it seems so far off and it seems mythological.
Yeah.
But in reality it would just happen. I mean.
Yeah.
And with the world so small and with our kind of weapons so big, and our machinery so big, and increasingly just like the fabric, us relying on more and more technology and social relations to exist really in the world today, it's a very fragile sense of being.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I think this is a cool episode to have.
Yeah, touching on the religious perspective of all these things, and a lot of them relate to the environment or ecology.
Well, yeah, we could talk about the eschatology of sustainability itself.
Yeah, so that's like the main reason why I would say it's a religion. That was one of our original questions, is sustainability becoming a religion? And my biggest argument was yes, because they have this, basically, if you don't change your ways, this is how you'll end up.
Yeah, like the religion is its prophecy.
Exactly.
That's like it's in the word.
Mm-hmm.
Sustainability implies a future, be it good or bad.
Yes, exactly.
Which is kind of fascinating, and I never thought about it that way until you mentioned it. But then it made me think about comparing it to other religions' ideas of the end times.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked into, there's only a couple which I knew of off the top of my head. So I knew of, obviously in Christianity, in Revelations, there's some vivid imagery.
Yes.
And some pretty strong predictions. This is what will happen.
Yes.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about that later. And I knew that in Norse mythology, which was, I guess, technically a pagan religion, but they had the Vikings had kind of their pantheism. Mm-hmm. And that was around the 10th to 13th century, I think. They had an event called Ragnarok, which is, popularized recently in the Thor movie, which was a funny induction into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by Taika Waititi. It was kind of comedic in, 2017?
Yeah, that was a good movie.
I did like that one.
It was the best, like, just looked really cool.
It had that rock guy.
Yeah?
Who's made of stone.
Yeah.
I liked him. Marvel takes their creative licenses with the Norse mythology, obviously, as is their right. So I was looking into it and seeing exactly what the kind of recorded myth was exactly. And I won't say what it was because it's very long and it used a lot of names and characters, which, as with most mythology, you had to know who they were.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to spend the whole episode explaining it. But essentially, the prediction was there's going to be a very long winter, which lasts about 3 times the length of an average winter.
Okay.
And because humans can't grow anything, or eat anything, society kind of devolves into anarchy. It says like men killing sons, brothers killing sisters, which is often
there's a very similar
how social anarchy is described in that, almost in those exact words, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Or kind of interesting anyway. But yeah, anarchy happens, so the human world is kind of under siege, and in that time, monsters start emerging as well. So it says a big snake comes out from the bottom of the ocean. She kind of emerges from some kind of slumber, I guess, and starts spewing stuff all over the landscape and really ravaging the towns. And I think there's a dragon, and there's a big wolf comes out, and then the Norse gods descend, and they basically all start engaging in fights with the monsters.
Oh, okay.
What happens is all the characters we know and love, Thor, Loki, Odin, they all die, as do the monsters. They all just kind of kill each other in the fight.
Okay.
And people all die too.
So just really just the end.
Yeah, that's the end.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was reading about it, and I was reading online about it, and it said, well, there are actually two myths, and that was kind of the main one. And then there was a second one, which was the exact same thing, but 2 humans survived. They'd stashed themselves away in the woods.
Okay.
Oh, also, the world is flooded at the end of the myth.
Okay.
I don't remember how, but the world gets flooded. But the more optimistic myth was that that's not the end, because 2 humans stashed themselves away in the woods, and the world floods, but then it kind of sinks a little bit, and the 2 humans repopulate the planet.
Okay. So there's like 2 options, basically.
Right, but the second option I don't think was purely Norse, because the more I learned about it, the more it seemed to me, and like most scholars on it think that was just the influence of Christianity.
That makes sense.
On that culture. So I don't know if that really counts, because we'll be talking about the Christian one anyway. So I think it's better just to consider the pure one, which is that everyone dies: the humans, the gods, and the monsters, and the land.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Fun. I think that's a common theme across pretty much every single religion, is that the end times are marked by destruction of the earth.
Yeah.
Like the physical, like nature, natural world. And either people are ascending, they're reincarnating, and they're like, there's something like people are separated, gods are separated from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of mentality of thinking, well, when the end times come, the planet's going to be destroyed, even in sustainability, it's like, if the planet's going to be destroyed inevitably due to climate change, why should we care?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what this whole field of study of ecology and religion is trying to prove, is like, this is why you should care. And pretty much every religion has teachings on, this is why you should care, like this is how you should care for the environment.
Well, what I had written down was that, because I want to talk about that a little bit, just going back to the Ragnarok. Okay. The essay I was reading kept asking the question, how would such, because that was the religion, that's what everyone thought, everyone knew. Okay. This is how they lived, with the assumption that the world would end like this. Okay. So the essay kept asking, well, how would that change the way the Vikings act? How would that influence their psyche? Okay. So what do you think?
If there was no way to avoid it, I feel like it would just be, then you can just pillage and exploit the earth, so it kind of makes sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what I had written down with that was, and a lot of religions are similar, which is that things will just end.
Yes.
They'll just end, and that's even kind of the scientific viewpoint, the sun will explode.
Yeah.
Way, ages from now.
Yeah.
But it will happen. Entropy, that's what entropy is in a scientific sense. Things degrade, things get more chaotic, things die. So that's why I find sustainability interesting, because the whole point of it is trying to stop that which seems to be inevitable. That's why I think it's religious. I don't know if it is a religion, but it has such a religious task or a mission, basically, which it imparts on its quote-unquote followers. Mm-hmm. Which is, you have a job, it's to stop this from happening.
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful way to motivate people or like rally people behind the cause, is to like use religious language.
Yeah, of course.
But not just the negative religious language, which I feel like has been kind of the case for a long time, is saying, oh, it's going to be an apocalypse, like really like fear, evoking fear in people and like shaming them. But I feel like they need to look to religions and see the positive language they use about the environment.
Well, sustainability that's what I mean. It's about the agency. You have the agency to stop it. Whereas if you want to talk about Revelations a little bit, just summarize that for us.
So Revelations it basically is describing the events leading up to when the world is like reborn, but this time with all good people, kind of.
Yeah, but I mean, who does the rebirth? Like who's involved?
So like, it's elaborate. So like God sends down 7 angels, and they pour out like 7 bowls of like suffering onto the world, and there's like 7 trumpets which are blown. And so, like, there's just, like, waves of devastation to the world. Basically, like, the land will not be fertile, and so, like, people will be suffering.
Right, so at that point...
Yes.
That's the same as all the other religions.
Yeah.
The gods, or whoever, the big natural processes, the gods have wreaked havoc.
Yeah, but
it's
then...
the same as the flood.
Yeah. But then those who are Christians will be raptured.
What does that mean?
So they'll be taken up, like they'll
by who?
Be left by God.
Yeah.
So like there's an opportunity for redemption, and then the world will be destroyed, and then there'll be a new earth with God Jesus on a throne.
Right.
With the river, like it's a new Eden basically, but it's described as basically how I always imagined it. It's like Eden, but like mirrored. So like there's 2 Edens, kind of. It's like always how I imagined it, with like the river of life and tree of life in the middle. Kind of like splitting it up, and then for 1,000 years Satan will be locked down below earth, the saints will be reborn again, and then after that 1,000 years the people who are Christians will come and inhabit the new earth. Is kind of the best way I can summarize it.
But the key that I was just trying to extract from that thanks for all the detail, but all I was thinking about was the redemption and the salvation is all through the gods. It's not through the people.
Okay.
They can save themselves.
Yeah.
But it's not the people who are creating this new place.
No.
So that's why I think sustainability is kind of fundamentally different. There are no gods involved.
Yeah.
It's kind of a basic secular idea.
Yeah.
There's a problem, you have to change it. No deity will do it for you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can describe it as a religious task, because there's pretty much no task bigger. So it's interesting.
Another thing I just thought of is with sustainability or like conservation, the thing is, like, even if people fail, like nature can maybe be considered the god, because it'll reboot itself. Like the planet's not gonna explode.
It won't die.
It won't die. It'll just
I wrote that down as well, because last week I made the claim. I didn't even make the claim. I said that what people always say is that humans are kind of unhelpful to ecosystems and the natural functioning of the natural world. We're not necessary. And I was thinking, because I don't have a super thorough environmental science background, I was like, is that true? I think it's true. I couldn't think of any examples where humans are necessary for ecosystems to thrive.
Yeah, I think things would balance out.
So I looked it up, and it's true. Humans aren't needed.
Yeah.
The world will be fine without humans on the planet. So that made me think, why are humans on the planet?
That's the question.
Which is, it's a big religious question, but the fact that we are not needed for natural processes seems evidence to me that there is an answer to that question, which is kind of a theological mini proof.
Yeah.
So I went to Genesis and I was like, well, why does it say humans? What is the wording when man comes into
nature?
Man comes into nature.
World. Yeah.
And it says, just paraphrasing some quotes, it says, man comes in to have dominion over the fish of the sea, etc. And it says to replenish the earth and subdue it. So we're kind of, in the Christian tradition anyway, born into a role of mastery over nature. And that's why there's a garden, which is there for us to prune it, essentially. And I was reading into that, and it said that's a very common criticism of Christian ecology, which is that, well, we're there to extract, we're there to take, we are masters, and we have dominion over all the creatures and all those kind of thing. But I looked into it, or I thought about it just a little bit more, and it said replenish the earth and subdue it. So subdue it means kind of tame it, make it inhabitable, basically, because otherwise it will kill you.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of it more as kind of like a royal position of power, almost, that mankind has over nature, as in the Christian tradition, God has over mankind. And I was thinking, well, that may be the case, but it's no excuse to exploit or oppress nature, because it doesn't say it in Genesis, but further on in the Bible we see pretty explicitly and quite often how God expects kings to rule.
Yeah.
Which is in a protective and egalitarian way. So I think while it's true that we must extract from nature,
yes,
we have to eat, we need shelter, we need materials. There's a way of doing that which is tyrannical, and there's a way of doing that which is sustainable.
Exactly, because we don't want to destroy it for future generations. That doesn't make any sense.
From a secular or from a religious point of view. So yeah, while we don't contribute in the way that nitrogen-fixing bacteria contributes to the nitrogen cycle, I think the only way that we can contribute in a way which isn't negative is to always be undoing our negative impacts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which seems kind of pessimistic. It's like, well, what? So the best we can do is maintain things, equally in nature? And I would say, yeah, that would be
great.
But it's so difficult. It's pretty much never been attained at a large scale. That almost seems like that's a final objective for the species.
Have things be balanced.
It's can you live with 10 billion of you, not with 100 of you in a small, in the woods or whatever, but with 10 billion of you in mega cities, traveling, going online, eating, drinking, buying clothes, making buildings, all these things, with your net impact being 0. I think that's kind of the final task, and that's what sustainability is, right?
Yeah. So how do you think the continually growing population impacts that? Do you think part of the reason why we haven't been able to achieve anywhere near net zero is because every year the population grows even more, more than we've ever had before?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
I looked it up, and take it with a grain of salt, because for something which I know there's going to be a multitude of answers to online, I usually just pick the first one. Okay. I'm like, well, everything's going to be in this ballpark, but nothing's going to be exact, and I'd have to estimate in the end anyway.
Yeah.
So I just checked the first article on The Atlantic that I saw about population predictions, and it said that we would be at around 10 to 11 billion, and it would plateau around the year 2100.
Yeah.
So that's how much the Earth can take, is 10 to 11 billion of us.
Yeah.
If that wasn't the case, it wouldn't plateau there. By nature, that's...
Yeah, exactly.
That's a doable number. So that's kind of, well, it's hopeful, it's optimistic to me, it's positive.
Yeah, I think the plateau will calm a lot of people down, because in the 80s, when the population bomb was published and people thought we were going to run out of food, the population was going to surpass our food production skills. No, it was released in the 60s. It didn't predict technology.
But we have more overweight people.
Yeah, that's true.
Than we have hungry people.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the age-old line, which is that it's not about the production, it's just about the distribution.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a different topic. But yeah, talking about our whole conception of society and growth, once we plateau,
then we know exactly how much waste we're going to have to manage, how much food we're going to have to produce, and then we can just,
for instance,
okay, we need to produce exactly this much, this is how we can do it in the most efficient way possible.
For instance, when we're building cities, we don't, a little bit we have in mind, because there's always movement between cities, but you don't have to think so much, well, how are we going to grow this out in 20 years?
Yeah.
Because there won't be such growth. Populations will fluctuate, and
of course
there'll be booms and busts or whatever, but for the most part, we will have what we have, and we'll have the people. So I think that will be positive, definitely from an environmental sense. The question is, until the year 2100, or when things start to plateau, things are not looking great. But when you say, okay, the Earth will be fine without humans, so we're talking about sustainability from an eschatological point of view, which is that climate change is happening. Yes, it's happened many times before, or a few times before, I don't know how many times. It happens naturally, but we are accelerating it and we're pushing it to an extreme, which it doesn't usually go to.
Yep.
All of which seems undeniable to me.
Yes.
Obvious. And kind of the most fervent, hyperbolic, I will say, people who are preaching that will say, it's total population collapse. Humans won't survive. The planet will survive without us, but humans won't survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, that's nonsense. I mean, the human race won't die out because of climate change.
Yeah.
But
it's just a lot of people will suffer.
A lot of people will suffer, and it will be geopolitically quite messy.
Yes.
You know,
all over those water. People will be immigrating.
Well, yeah.
All over the place.
All those kind of religious end timesy analogs people make between climate change and religious apocalypses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that all makes sense. You know, floods, droughts, natural disasters. What else? Ice melting, floods.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. The humanitarian crises, war over resources and over land.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's say that all happens. Worst case possible scenario.
Okay.
And then picture the world 100 years after that worst case possible scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Population's way lower, so are emissions, because the population's so much lower, and people are like, wow, we see the error of our ways. So effectively, degrowth is achieved.
Yeah. Through
a heck of a lot of crises and suffering. So that will happen.
If things don't change.
If that, that's the worst case scenario. Is like,
yeah.
Well, eventually we'll achieve degrowth, but it will be historic levels of suffering, war,
mm-hmm.
and natural disasters. So basically the sustainability movement is, this will happen, this is our Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Can we skip straight to the good stuff without having to go through all that? And now people say, well, climate change is already happening. Nothing we can do about it now. It's like, yeah, it's happening, but you can really, really slow it down, and you can prevent most of that.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of movements of peoples. I think that seems pretty locked in, but you can prevent so much of it. If you weren't so defeatist is a big thing.
Yeah.
And if you really all bought into it.
I think if everyone cooperated, then if a nation goes underwater, and then it's like, cool, the neighboring countries don't have the capacity to integrate these people, but maybe if they were collaborating, they could say, hey, these people could go here. Like, I feel like it would just take a lot of cooperation, and everybody would have to be on board. Yeah,
well, I don't know geopolitics, but just speaking from a kind of religious sense, or from an abstract sense, can it be done without that kind of mass disaster? Yes.
Yeah.
It will take, unprecedented amounts of cooperation and ingenuity and forethought and urgent action.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely, but just spreading that genuinely just spreading that kind of terrifying imagery is a big part of the battle. And I don't think people do well enough at doing that, but that's another discussion. The other kind of religious injunction, I don't know.
We'll see.
Injunction that I wanted to make from that Genesis reading was that we are made to have dominion over the fish of the sea. Again, this is seeming really Bible-centric. That's because it's the book on which Western civilization was built.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the only way I can talk anyway.
Yeah, I can speak to some other religions after, just what their thoughts are on
that would be great.
The environment, yeah.
But yeah, we're made to have dominion over the fish of the sea, replenish the earth and subdue it. So that places us immediately as separate from nature.
Mm-hmm.
We're fundamentally different from other animals. And that's why when people say, we're just other animals, we're just like monkeys or whatever it may be, it's like, no, common sense can see that, because we are speaking on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of wildly different, but also ecologically we can look at it and say, no, because we don't contribute to ecosystems the way other animals do. We're not necessary the way other animals are.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that, saying that's why we're separate, because people often say, well, why are we separate? Like, we come from the dust, we're going to return to the dust just like everything else, but that's saying we're not necessary to these ecosystems.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
So fundamentally I say, we don't contribute, all we do is extract.
Mm-hmm. So we need to do it in a sustainable way.
And the best we can do is minimize our extractions.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like I'm kind of degrading humanity, but it's not, because we have other roles. We have philosophy and entertainment and art and all the,
Yeah.
we beautify basically is what we do. But I just wanted to make that point. It seems key to me that we are not of nature really. Like we're natural, we're part of nature, but we're separate from it, which is so anthropocentric. I know, because we view, like, that's kind of a biblical root for viewing ecosystems as made for humans.
Yeah.
Fish are there for us to eat.
Yeah.
Nature is there for us to subdue and make into gardens. And I think there's an element of that. I also think it's important to keep wilderness.
I think so. I think wilderness has a really big role in spirituality.
But I also think sustainability often kind of berates the idea of anthropocentrism.
Yeah.
When really I don't think the two have to be in conflict. So I just wrote down here anthropocentric sustainability, which seems kind of silly, but to me that's just how I think it. That's how I think about it anyway.
No, I think that makes sense. Because that's the only way you're going to get people on board to say,
right,
you need to change your ways. We have to make it about them.
Yeah. It might be a little bit too, well, one, I think it's wrong, and two, I don't think it's very contagious an idea to say, here's why we should be sustainable, because we're just like animals.
Yeah.
No one's saying that, but it's at the root of a lot of sustainable thinking.
I think it's a way to get people to identify with nature is like personifying nature or seeing themselves in it. I know there's a ton of indigenous cultures across the world, and I can't remember exactly which one this is, but we were talking about it in class, and they said, no, never mind, this was one of the sustainable religions. This was the deep ecology. They were like up in the mountains, and someone was like hunting and shot a wolf, and then like looked into the eyes of the wolf and like saw the spirit of the mountain in it, like saw nature communicating to him, saying like, stop killing these animals.
Yes.
So I feel like by personifying nature and like seeing yourself in them, there's no way to be completely non-anthropocentric, I think, in this movement.
Well, there's wisdom in nature. We know this. There's wisdom and there's beauty in nature. That's pretty much, unless you are, kind of basically religious, that's where you extract your wisdom and your aesthetics, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is saying.
But I think what you just said about the indigenous person or whoever it was looking into the eyes of the wolf and it's saying, don't kill us.
Yeah.
See, that's what I don't think will catch on or is necessary for the kind of sustainable movement. Because that's kind of from the viewpoint that we and nature are one, we and the wolf are one.
Yeah.
And it's like, to a degree that's true.
Yeah.
But to another, looking at it straight on, it's like, no.
No, there's a difference.
There is a difference.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think, preaching the similarities is important, but that's, if we're going along those lines, then that's when you kind of get into the sense that veganism is the only ethical way of living, and, all speciesism is wrong, and I kind of disagree with that, but we talked about that on other episodes.
Yeah, I also think with like 98% of the world identifying with some kind of religion, or however high it is, trying to kind of say,
that's true.
Not feeding into the different viewpoints is just not going to work. Trying to have some kind of one set of ideologies and values is just not, it can't happen. So we need to work together amongst the religions, not trying to homogenize them.
Yeah, and well, not even trying to homogenize them. A lot of sustainability is, they consider it kind of fundamentally secular, which is that, we said it, that so now the better way of doing it is to try and reconcile any issues which there may be between Christianity and sustainability, Islam and sustainability, Buddhism and sustainability, which when you actually look at the text, I often don't think are that big. I don't think they do contradict in many big ways.
I think the adopted, or why from the outside looking in, you might say, well, Christianity is in opposition with climate change. A bunch of far right people are denying it. But I think that's due to the traditional denial of technology or science, saying this is not religious, or this isn't.
That's what we were saying before, is that it's not really about climate change or about the environment. It's more yet another incarnation of the religion versus science struggle, which doesn't really exist in this case, or in most cases, but which people are made to feel like they need to pick a side on. I think, often. But you had some notes on common ecological themes between religions, or unique ones to religions, right?
Yeah.
So I think that'll be an optimistic way to kind of almost wrap up this episode.
Yeah. I'm going to start with, there's one religion I recently learned about. It's called Jainism. And it's basically don't hurt anything. So like they're the people that like brush their like path before they walk so that they don't kill a bug, because they think every living thing has a spirit.
Right.
That is like ordained from the creator to have value. It's all holy, and that is the first common ecological theme across all religions, is that nature was created by a god, by the gods, so therefore it deserves to be revered. Right. And I think that just makes sense and is often forgotten about. But it's similar to people kind of forgetting about taking care of their own bodies, as being like, because I feel like sometimes people really focus on the spiritual, like disembodying themselves and just reaching enlightenment or connecting more with God. And I think we need to kind of like re-inhabit our bodies, re-inhabit our ecosystems.
True.
Because we need to realize all of these things are created by God, so they're holy, and that's, just one thing.
Well, I think this is something also about us spending less time in the physical world. So we spend more time thinking or, daydreaming or in our subconscious, which kind of reinforces a separation between the spirit and the physical world, when in reality they're one.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you stopped feeding yourself, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
But like when you're on the computer, like watching whatever, like you kind of forget that you have a body. It's kind of the thing. And I feel like that's definitely one of the biggest issues, is like the way technology is kind of pulling us out of the physical world. Because it's like in the past, maybe a lot of these issues were caused due to people really focusing on the spiritual elements of religion. But now even people who are like secular people who are just focusing on maybe technology over the physical. It's like everybody has
and it's not just the physical, because technology is physical.
Yeah.
But you mean, one, the fact that we are immersing ourselves in, is this even physical, what I'm looking at right now, which is our podcast software. I can see the lines moving and I can see the kind of things blinking. Is this physical? I don't know. So that's a kind of weird...
The tactile, maybe?
Yeah, that's a weird kind of definition, which I feel like our culture has not made, which we probably need to
yes.
Pretty urgently, or maybe deliberately tries not to make, because technology's aim right now seems to be to try and blend that line between physical and corporeal, I would say. I don't know. So technology, we need to remember that is material. So when we're saying physical world, I think what we mean is nature.
Yeah.
Because you're saying the common theme across religions is that they view all nature as sacred and divinely created, but
basically that it has value in itself.
Yeah, but the technology is not that.
No.
Because that's what we make.
We've made. Yeah.
That's man-made. That's our spawn.
Mm-hmm.
So we should not revere that.
Yeah, I think so. Because just have no other gods before me. I'm sure every other religion has something similar to that. Like you need to...
Well, even from a secular sense, I don't think it's good to worship our own...
creations.
Our own creations.
Because they're fleeting.
Yeah, because they don't last, and also because we should always be recognizing humanity's shortcomings from whatever spiritual background you're coming from. We should always be recognizing humanity's flaws. And if we worship our accomplishments above all else, we're not doing that.
Yeah. So another common environmental ethic across the world's religions is that the humans' dependence on nature should be celebrated in some kind of rituals or how you live your daily life.
Okay.
So these are all super similar. There's 8 of them, but I lumped the first 3 together basically.
So you mean like Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Okay.
So or taking retreats into the woods, and it just needs to be celebrated somehow. So that's one that's common across them all.
Right. Another
one is moral norms, so not killing, being compassionate, being just, doesn't just apply to humans. So apparently that is, I'm reading from a list which has been compiled by an expert who studied world religions.
Okay.
And he said these are common across all of them. So I haven't pulled the exact examples or exact passages about where they come from.
Yeah, we can think
but
about that one.
This is another one. So yeah.
So it's what? Thou shalt not kill is also applicable to animals?
Yeah. But it's like, it's not just, like, it's not saying you can't kill animals.
No, that makes sense. Well, even the Bible, it's not saying kill in the sense that we know it, right?
Yeah.
It means murder, which are two different words.
Yeah, so it's a violent,
yes,
unjustified,
that
killing.
makes sense. And if it's, the thing I like about common themes is that if several different cultures came up with them independently of one another, it speaks to a truth.
Yes.
Which is why, over time, over thousands of years of evolution, we now have an instinctive distaste for things which are unethical. That's what we call unethical.
Exactly.
So, murdering, we know that's bad, that's ingrained.
Yes.
And the same, I guess, with killing animals, which makes sense because that seems bad to me.
Yeah. And then it's just in the same point, it's saying like the well-being of humans and the well-being of non-human beings are inseparably connected. So that's basically kind of saying sustainability. Like,
well, I think
you can't exploit and plunder the earth and expect to be okay.
That's what modern times, that's the one we've forgotten.
Yes.
The other ones wouldn't be contentious, but now you've got people hedging their bets, positing themselves as divine beings and saying, really, you want to bet? Because I bet I can collapse these ecosystems all over the world and I'll still be okay because of this new technological and economic paradise I guess I live in.
Yeah.
But it will always have consequences.
In Hinduism, there's a passage. It says, there is an inseparable bond between man and nature. For man, there cannot be an existence removed from nature. So that was just on my screen, and that proves exactly what we just said. The next one is that there's legitimate and illegitimate uses of nature.
So that's what I was reading with the Bible thing, right? Which is subdue it, have dominion. There's two different readings of those. And one is the responsible king.
Yes, who is benevolent.
And one is the crude, exploitative king, which is common all through the Old Testament and which is definitely common ecologically so today, yeah.
Yes. And I think a lot of them have very explicit teachings on what you can and can't eat, how you can eat, how you can extract resources, what you can wear.
Right, so rules on gluttony, basically.
Yeah. Oh, the next one is greed and destructiveness are condemned in all religions. That's good. Restraint and production are commended. So, not being gluttonous or lazy.
Yeah, that's the big corporation today.
Yeah.
Greed and destruction, that pretty much sums up Nestle, Coca-Cola, all the big transnational corporations.
Yes. Yeah, and so I think we need to remember restraint, because just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think that's just
true. I think, this is a little bit off topic, but talking about those corporations, the best thing we can do is put them into a position where they can't, right?
Yeah.
Because most companies or most people know that this is wrong, but because they can, they do it. The aim is really devising some kind of system where it's not possible to be so exploitative.
Yeah, I think that's the only way, because even if people know, in their gut, that this is wrong, they'll convince themselves that it's right.
Well, the interesting thing is, exactly. We know this socially. We know that people across cultures and across history are bad, and they will do bad if they're given the chance to do it.
Yeah.
So we know that the way of creating a successful society is putting people into a position where they can't do so much bad.
Yeah.
Effectively. There's laws and there's a justice system and that kind of thing, but we do that through various means, empowering them in certain ways, teaching them, but that's the main thing.
Yes.
Put people into a position where they can't be so oppressive and cruel.
Yes.
So I think if we view sustainability the same way, which is that across cultures and across history, people are so, naturally unsustainable, that it almost seems accidental.
Yeah.
So the way we make a sustainable world is putting them into limiting our ability to exploit nature, really.
Yeah.
And also educating, empowering, and really preaching it as an ethic. What you take, you must give back. What tree you chop down, you must replant.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah, I think just reconnecting people with the consequences of their actions, because I feel like nobody does something bad and thinks, like, while thinking, oh, this is a bad thing to do, this is a bad thing to do, they've somehow distanced themselves from the outcome of their actions. They've convinced themselves it's right. So I think...
Yeah, I would say we.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Well, a big part of it is the globalized world.
Mm-hmm.
We can drink the Nestle tea because we don't see their kind of gross monocrop plantation because it's on another continent.
Yeah, we use our laptops, which have been... The minerals have been mined using child labor. Like, if that was happening in your backyard, you just wouldn't use it.
Yeah, that's human nature.
Yeah.
Which is why I think we need to... the best chance is just to devise a system where it's not an option to buy those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's...
then it will force innovation.
Well, not just the best chance for us to kind of achieve sustainability.
Yeah.
But the only way. Like, yeah. I just don't think there will ever be a time when everyone's buying fair trade, even though the option is...
Even though there's an option for non-fair trade?
Yeah, because it's always going to be cheaper.
Exactly.
Because it's made through exploitative means. And
yeah.
the same with sustainability. I don't think there will ever be a time that everyone's buying local when the alternative is...
way cheaper.
Yeah. Because people can't.
Exactly.
So, yeah. That's a bit of a rant off topic.
No, but I think that kind of gets to the bottom of how the relationship between religion and ecology is, like, instituting some kind of moral, like, setting a commonly held morality surrounding the environment that is really present, and the impacts of it are preached.
Yeah.
Because the impacts of what happens if you don't adhere to your religious beliefs are preached. Like, you know exactly what would happen.
You'll go to hell.
Yeah. You'll be reincarnated as a hell being, or you'll... Yeah. So I think basically people make the choice to be good if it will benefit them in the long run. But if people don't see the benefits to themselves in the long run, then they're not going to choose to be good if they only see the benefits in the moment.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of why people sin, is because they see, well, in the moment this is going to feel good, or this is going to be beneficial to me if I exploit this resource.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, like, as they were doing it, there was just, like, so many voices and so much social pressure on them saying, like, they're super hyper aware of the long-term impacts of their actions. I mean, this isn't, like, a new revelation or anything, but this is just, we need to create a system where the long-term impacts of your actions are really, you're really aware of them, just like is the case in world religions.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, and I think the second part to that is that we need to use religious language to be able to, like, convince people of the importance of sustainability. Because I'm just going to go from a Christian perspective, because this is what I can speak on, is, like, I was never taught about the importance of environmental stewardship, but there's 100 verses in the Bible which tell you exactly how important it is. So I think religious leaders just need to, because I don't think it's unethical to, like, I think it's more unethical to just suppress those things and not talk about them, like, omit them from your teachings.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's unethical.
Well, even if those teachings weren't there, at this current time, it's completely unethical to condemn so many hundreds of millions of people from suffering, which will occur, you know. Yeah,
so even if there weren't teachings on environmental stewardship and just teachings on caring for your neighbor, it still is relevant. Like, you need to, like, you just need to take care of the environment, and I think we need to start putting that kind of at the top of our list of priorities, because I think religious values can be used as a foundation for those things. So compassion and kindness and humility can be used as, like, they're a super solid foundation. They're required in more than just environmental parts of life, but, like, just need to be kind of looping them back into these are the actions or the consequences of your actions to the physical world and spiritual world.
Yeah. One last interesting observation I had to make, which is that humans have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And on a kind of global consciousness level, not just small communities, but on a global consciousness level. And then we've only been aware of climate change and greenhouse gas emissions and the idea that we must be sustainable for, what, about 100 years?
Yeah.
So that's kind of cause for optimism for me.
That's true.
Because, well, we haven't really been trying it for very long. So that's why still a lot of people aren't very convinced.
Yeah.
For the most part. So definitely reading into ancient philosophies to which they already subscribe is a great and effective idea. I think we can close this episode. We described the Norse apocalypse and the Christian one, and in a previous episode called On the 5 Ages of Mankind, we described Hesiod's prediction for the end times, and he was a Greek writer. So we could just kind of describe the sustainable one, which is, we kind of already put it together, which is the current level of environmental degradation will lead to all manner of crises, both ecological and social, and that no gods will swoop in and help us. You know, the floods will just kind of happen by themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people will die, a lot of humanitarian crises, everyone's lives will change.
Yes.
You know, no matter what kind of protected corner of the world you're in.
Yeah, you'll be impacted.
You will be impacted in some way.
The current crisis that you'll be impacted no matter where you are.
From the current virus, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sustainability proposition is this. Though there's no kind of divine help, everyone has agency, and you can change it yourself.
Yeah.
Through your own actions, through awareness.
Through advocacy.
And through definitely political action.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a Peter Pan scenario where if enough people, you know, envision that we can live sustainably and cancel out our negative impacts, which will always be there, which I think a lot of sustainable people kind of forget.
Yes.
It's like there won't ever be a time when we're not extracting. The goal is that we're always replenishing at the same time. Yeah, if everyone believes in a time like that, and really not just as a, you know, pie in the sky dream that will happen one day, you know, a very vague image, and definitely not just as an eventual state which we will reach after all the destruction, but if they view it as a genuine alternative to that destruction, we can reach this instead of plummeting towards chaos. If everyone believes that and acts like they believe it, I think we reach that. But when people act out of defeatism or denial, that's when we deviate from that course.
Yeah, without faith in something, there's no way that you're going to.
Faith is a good word.
Yeah.
You've got to hold tight to human ingenuity and your own agency. That's definitely the secular, sustainable view of it. If you're religious, it's not divorced from your faith already.
Exactly.
You know, hold tight to what you have and what you believe in, and vote, go vegan, tell your friends about it.
Yeah.
Draw up images of what the world could look like. You know, this is key.
And just share it with people.
Really believe that. And it will happen. Most definitely.
I think so. So that wraps up today's episode.
Yeah, next week we're probably going to be completely concluding our Religion and Ecology series with an episode on religious environmental art.
Yeah, so we'll be kind of looking at that, and we're going to compile all the questions we've asked so far over the last 3 episodes, and maybe try and find some pieces of art which answer those, or we'll mainly be just focusing on the aesthetics of how these different religions represent the environment and how that inspires their followers. So
yeah, it would be a nice ending.
Where can they follow us, Aaron?
Excuse me? Where can they follow us? We're on Instagram at @the_environmental, despite what some comments say. Despite what one comment said, we don't like being on Instagram or social media in general, but it must be done.
Yeah, we're aware of the hypocrisy. I was saying something the other day about, like, what was it? It was similar to, like, that you have to work within the current systems to change them, but it was just like, oh, we don't want to preach to the choir. We don't want to be speaking at lectures of sustainable people who don't have Instagram. We want to reach those kids who are on Instagram.
Otherwise, you're not going to get anyone off of Instagram.
Exactly.
But I hate that my screen time and my Instagram time has, like, completely quintupled since we started doing it. But anyway, you can find us on Instagram. We post a lot of cool scientific and artistic content and some behind-the-scenes
type stuff.
We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. You know this if you're listening, with new episodes every Monday. Have a great day and stay
clean